Today's guest is someone whose life and work remind us that leadership doesn't begin with a title, it begins with character. Jack Williams is a graduate of Georgia Tech, where his passion for leadership first took shape, not only in the classroom, but on the football field. As a quarterback and team captain, Jack learned early that influence is built through trust, accountability, and example. And those lessons stayed with him as he went on to coach at the Division I level and later lead teams in the business world, serving in executive roles across multiple organizations. But what truly defines Jack's journey is his commitment to developing people, especially young people. In the early 1990s, Jack founded the Ideals Foundation, driven by a belief that students and student athletes need more than talent to succeed. They need clarity, character, and purpose. And since then, Ideals has worked with thousands of students, schools, teams, and districts, helping them develop leadership skills, life skills, and the confidence to become positive role models in their communities. In 2008, Jack made a pivotal decision to step away from the corporate world and devote himself fully to this calling, expanding Ideals and launching his consulting work through the Timbridge Group. His leadership programs have since been requested by state departments of education, athletic associations, and organizations across the Southeast. Jack is also the author of The Question, a guide to answering life's most important question. It's a powerful exploration of values, beliefs, and the decisions that shape our lives. And through his own podcast, KnowledgeCast, Jack continues to spotlight stories of leadership, resilience, and impact. At the heart of all his work is a simple, enduring belief. When people understand who they are and what they stand for, they lead differently, and they live differently. We're honored to have Jack Williams on today's episode. Welcome back to the Communities of Character. It's the podcast where we explore how character shapes leadership, culture, and community. I'm Jennifer, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Laura.
Hey everyone, we are so excited that you're here. Today's conversation is one we've been looking forward to for a while. Our guest today is Jack Williams, founder of Ideals Leadership. He's someone whose really life's work has centered on helping students, athletes, and leaders understand who they are, what they stand for, and how character shapes every decision they make. Jack, we're so grateful you're with us.
Oh, it's a thrill to be with you. Appreciate what y'all do.
Absolutely. Jack, your work centers deeply on character and personal core values, and that's something we like to talk about often on this podcast. So please share with us from your perspective, why is character the foundation of effective leadership, especially for young people?
Well, I think everything starts with a person's values, priorities, and beliefs. And to me, that sums up what character is all about. And it shapes really who they are and how they think and what's important to them. And, a leader can't lead others until they've got a firm grasp of who they are and make sure that they're focusing on being the best them that they can be rather than trying to imitate somebody else and their leadership style, which is a big mistake that some leaders tend to do. They try to, they're impressed with somebody's leadership and they try to be them instead of being them. So they got to be comfortable and confident in who they are and what they stand for, and everything else becomes a byproduct of that foundation.
I love that, especially for young people who are really in the throes of learning about themselves and learning who they are and what they stand for. And it's something really important for them to learn as a young person, that they have to lead themselves, like you said, before they can lead others. And I think it really reminds us that leadership is not a title. It's something that is who we are long before anyone's watching us as a leader.
Yeah, I mean, what a great thing to know, right? That you can't lead anybody else until you know who you are. That's a powerful statement there, Jack. I know you've trained thousands of athletes over the years. So when you look across all those experiences, what character traits do you consistently see in the strongest leaders? And which traits do you believe are the most transformational when they're intentionally developed?
Well, I want to make one other comment on that first question. A title does not designate a leader. It just gives them an opportunity to. The real definition of a leader is if you turn around and find out that at least somebody's following there, and that by definition is a leader. To your question, Laura, if I knew that exact answer, I'd write a book that would sell a lot more copies than my book that I did write. But, I think, and it took me a while to understand this because some of this is counterintuitive in terms of what you think from a leadership perspective. But I think it really is a servant mindset. I think a leader's got to have strong communication skills, obviously high integrity. But I think too that took me a while to understand was humility and transparency because you can always work to become a better communicator. And when we talk about communication, most people think of the communication skills and they forget probably the most important part of communication, and that's being a good listener. If you want to have a lot of good friends, be a good listener because people want to be around you. But it's really hard as a leader to allow yourself to be vulnerable and transparent because leaders think too often that they have to have all the right answers and can't make any mistakes. And I used to say in the businesses that I was leading that, listen, if you're expecting me to make all the right answers, let me just say right now, you're going to be disappointed right off the bat. I said, the key is when I make a bad one, you got to help me realize it. We've got to acknowledge it. We got to correct it. And then we just got to move on. But the hardest part, I think, is for a leader to acknowledge the fact that you made a mistake in front of the people that you're leading. And that transparency and humility have to be there. If you're transparent and have a humble mindset and a servant mindset and a good communicator, I think you're off and running as a leader.
Yeah, I love that you say that piece about humility and vulnerability because I think that's something that as leaders that we sometimes often struggle with, right? The ability to just be real and be honest and say, hey, I don't know the answer. Those are such important reminders that those traits don't just benefit the team, they shape the person long beyond sports.
Well, if you show it, then, hopefully it's going to go downhill and the people that work for you will be transparent and humble as well. So it's got to work all the way out, through the organization.
That modeling is so important. And Jack, you mentioned your book. You have a book called The Question, and you guide readers toward answering what you describe as life's most important question. And so I want to ask you, how does clarity around beliefs and core values, how do they shape the decisions that leaders make every day?
Well, let me describe the I believe list before I give you the answer because you probably understand a little bit better. But I wrote the book about an experience that I started in 1993. I was jogging and I was listening to a tape. Your listeners can Google that. And it was on principles, and it wasn't on the educational principle. But I said, I know what a principle is. It's a code of conduct. It's a standard. I said, it's kind of what you believe in. And I realized that I had never put in writing what Jack Williams personally believed in. So I got out an ink pen and a notebook sheet of paper at that time. And I just started writing sentences that began with the two words, I believe, and whatever came to my mind. And I kept that with me for like 6 weeks before I finished coming up with my list. It had 68 items on it. And I was kind of patting myself on the back for taking the time to do it. And then I said, well, now what do you do? And I said, well, I need to keep it fresh on mind. So for the next 11 years, I read that every morning before going to work as a reminder. All right, big boy, this is what you said is important. Now your actions going to support your beliefs. And after 11 years, I switched to reading it every Monday morning to start the week. So I've been reading it either daily or weekly for 32 years now. And because of that, it constantly keeps in front of me, what I think is important. And once you understand those values, priorities, and beliefs, and you stay focused on them, then pretty much everything will kind of flow from it. It's going to affect all your interactions with others. It's going to affect your decisions. In fact, one of the things I didn't realize till after the fact, but almost all of the topics that I have created for our programs came off of one of my belief statements. And
That's amazing.
It just happened. And I look back and realized that, gosh, it is flowing. And all those programs basically that I created for students and athletes were first created for me. I didn't create something initially for them. And I just then modified it for their application.
That's amazing. What a powerful practice to be so consistent that for 11 years you would read those statements every morning to remind yourself, these are the things that I believe in, so that as decisions came to you, as problems came to you, you would be reminded of those belief statements so that the decisions that you had to make and the judgment calls and operations, all of those situations would fall back on what you believe. That is extremely powerful. I love that.
Well, you just have to keep it front of mind, because if you don't,
Mhm.
it's a nice exercise, but then you go on to something else. So
Mhm.
key is writing it down, but the second key is you've got to keep that front of mind.
That's awesome. I love that.
It's I'm especially grateful for your I Believe list, Jack, because I know you founded the Ideals Foundation more than 30 years ago, but as a coach, I used your program and created an I Believe list with many of my teams, and that's something that I still look at today. So I know you've mentioned that was kind of the first kickstart of what you did, but is there another moment or experience that convinced you that this was really the center of the work that you were going to do for 30 years?
Yeah, I was coaching college football a long time ago before they were paying what they pay now. If I'd have known they were going to pay what they pay now, I'd stayed in. But I was at Georgia Tech, and I was recruiting a young man. I'm going to date myself, but it was way back in 1972, and he was in Virginia. And back then, you had unlimited visits and didn't have stars ratings and all that. But he would have been a 5-star. He was being recruited by Southern Cal all the way across to Ohio State. But I thought I had a pretty good relationship with him. And I was at the school one day, and we were talking, and he looked at me. He said, "Coach, let's get down to business." Now, this was a young man that was a National Honor Society, captain of 2 teams, just an incredible leader and unbelievable personality. And he said, "Let's get down to business," which didn't sound like any of our other conversations. And I said, "What's that, Larry?" He said, "It's $8,000. Are you in or you out?" Well, I knew exactly what he was asking, but I played dumb, which is one of my character traits. And I said, "Larry, I don't understand. What's 8,000 get me?" He said, "It puts you in the quarterfinals to keep recruiting me." So he wanted to be bought, which was totally opposite of anything I'd ever had any indication of him in my time with him. So I knew we were out. We weren't going to play that game. And so I tried to think of a teaching moment. I said, "Larry, let me tell you something." I said, "You're the sharpest young man I've had a chance to recruit. I haven't been doing it that long, but you're the best I've ever been, because you made an incredible amount of good decisions to put you on this interstate that'll take you wherever you want to go." I said, "But just a minute ago, you told me you're getting ready to put your blinker on and you're going to take an exit ramp. And if you take that exit ramp, I'm going to promise you, you'll never see that interstate again." And I'm thinking, that's pretty good for not having time to, think through it. And he looks at me and he said, "So you're not in, huh?" I said, "No, we're not in." Well, I have no idea what the final price was that they bought him for, but he went to a Big Ten school, which will remain nameless, that was known for buying players back then. This was before NIL. This was illegal payments. And but he was a great player. He was Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. He was #1 draft pick of the Dallas Cowboys. Played 6 years in the NFL. Never was a star. And 15 years after I met him, he's from Virginia. In the Atlanta, Georgia paper where I live, there was a major article that said former Dallas Cowboy Larry Bethea commits suicide.
Mm.
He'd been a suspect in 2 7-Eleven robberies to support his drug habit. And I keep thinking, as tragic as it was that he took his life, the thing that kept hitting me was he was such a great leader and people wanted to follow him. Obviously, when he put that first blinker on, he continued to put a lot of blinkers on. And I just wonder how many people behind him put their blinkers on. And so that was kind of the catalyst for saying, well, look, the pros, they're too far gone. The college kids are about to be too far gone, but I think we can make an impact in high school. And so that was the purpose to create a program that would help young people be more effective leaders and positive role models. And we started with athletes because our society's placed athletes in positions of influence, good or bad. It's not going to change. And unfortunately, that influence hadn't always been good. So that was kind of the motivation of creating the program and what we've been doing for 30-something years.
Wow. While I am, while it's sad to hear his story, I'm so grateful for that interaction and for the legacy of Ideals Foundation and what you continue to do in the lives of student athletes.
Looking back over 3 decades, Jack, how has the mission of Ideals evolved as you've grown, as your team members have grown, just gotten older and more evolved and lived this practice for so long? What part of your original vision has remained unchanged with Ideals?
Well, Jennifer, really, I don't know if this is good or bad, but we really haven't changed much. The vision that I just shared about, helping young people become more effective leaders and positive role models has never changed, has never varied, and has never shifted. How we go about doing it, I guess, is a better part of answering your question. We started with a live program in Atlanta, Metro Atlanta, where schools would nominate junior student athletes to come to an 8-week program on Sunday nights. That program is still going. We'll be, in fact, Friday is the deadline for application for our 26th school, which will be our 33rd year of having that particular school. And so that's been the foundation of what we do. But off of that, we've spun off some different programs using that content as kind of the core. We have a mini four-week program now that we've done. We do one-day district leadership conferences where schools from a district can nominate kids, and we come in and we get them together for one day. And the beauty of interacting these kids with other schools is a lot of times a male or female athlete may think they're the Lone Ranger and trying to make the right decisions and lead the right way at their school, and they can get very frustrated. And when they get in an environment with other leaders from other schools with the same mindset, it really kind of charges their battery, and they share ideas and develop relationships. And we stay in touch with the kids that have been through our one in Atlanta. We've had over 1,600 kids go through that. In fact, the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks is one of our Ideals graduates.
Oh.
But we've even had 6 marriages come out of those programs because the kids get a chance to really develop a strong relationship with each other. And so the only thing we really kind of battled, if you want to use that word, is do we want to place more emphasis on live programs or video programs? The video programs, obviously, you can reach more people, and we've created the Georgia Department of Education asked us to create a series of life skills programs for their students. We've just created our most recent program called Developing Your Life, an athletic program signature. But the question that, we kind of try to balance is where can we have the most emphasis and most impact? And so we love our video programs, particularly this most recent one that we've come out with, but we're shifting a little bit more attention to try to do more live programs because you do have a little bit more impact when you're doing a video program and it's facilitated on campus. If Laura Casey's doing it, I don't worry about it. But if there may be somebody else that doesn't facilitate it the way we want, and you can't control that. You can control the content, but you can't control the facilitation. So actually, we're looking for some retired coaches and ADs that want to kind of stay involved that, might want to get certified to be a facilitator for us in different states so that we can use more live programming.
That's really neat. And I think that it shows just how much character and core values and having those I believe statements stand the test of time. And that consistency just says so much about the clarity of the purpose from the beginning. So that's very cool.
Yeah, I love how intentional you are about developing your organization and developing people. What have you learned over the years about the connection between strong character in the individual and strong team culture?
Well, they go hand in hand. Culture, culture is just so important in business, and it applies in athletics too. There's a saying that, culture will eat strategy every time. And you can come up with the greatest game plan you want, but if you don't have the culture, it's not going to get executed. And culture it's kind of hard to define culture. You know when you got it and you know when you don't have it. And, the great programs are player led, they're not coach led. And the players determine that culture. The coach can enhance it, or they could also destroy it. But I think I want to. This is not an advertisement, but I think it might answer the question a little bit. The most recent program that we've come up with, Developing Your Life and Athletic Program Signature, is based on the fact that everybody's got a unique fingerprint. Well, they've also got a unique handwriting style. And when you sign your name on a document, you're saying, I'm good for that. Well, how good is that signature? That's just ink on paper. It's only as good as the person behind it. And that's what we call your life signature. We've trademarked that term, life signature. And we think a person's life signature, and I think this also refers to culture within a team or an individual or coach. And that is that, it's going to be four things going to determine that. The combination of your values, priorities, and your beliefs. What do you believe in? Like what we've been talking about. Second, how you define success. I found out the hard way that if you don't define what success means to you personally, you have no choice but to try to live up to other people's definition. And that is a very frustrating example. From a coaching standpoint, we emphasize in this program, most teams will set their goals for X number of wins or, for a region championship or what have you. And that's great, but that's a pretty narrow focus. And, we challenge them, wouldn't it be pretty cool for a school if the athletic program where the team or the athletic director had a goal of a GPA? We want our athletes this year to have this kind of GPA, or we want to have so many community service hours, or we want to have so many mentoring hours, or we want to have this, that, and the other, and expanding that definition of success where it's a much broader, more impactful. And the third area that affects your culture is your willingness to face reality and act on it. I think one of the biggest problems we got in this country in every aspect of it is that we don't face reality. We just play make-believe on stuff and hope it's going to change. And a leader has got to have the courage to deal with the facts and what's really happening in their own life, in their team, in their culture, and whatever it might be. And are we doing what needs to be done to get us where we want to go? And if not, do we have the courage to step up and say, this is not going to work and we have to change something? And then the last part is your decision making, the quality of your decision making. So your values, priorities, and beliefs, how you define success, courage to face reality, and the quality of your decisions. All of those are going to determine what your signature is, or what your culture is, or what your brand is. And all of those are equally important in my mind.
I love that you talk about those things because you're really not talking about, you are talking about an individual, but you're talking about the collective beliefs of the people in the organization. And I think that's true for teams and businesses and schools alike, that it does take everybody moving in the same direction and believing and knowing the answers to those questions that you've talked about. So it's a great reminder that it's those repeated behaviors and those repeated beliefs over time that really is what creates that strong culture.
Well, I ask athletic directors all the time. I said, if you polled right now your coaches and asked them to define success as a coach, how many different answers would you get? And most of them would say more than I would like. And that's, well, you want them to be themselves, but they're in your program, and there should be some common theme or thread that goes through about what does success look like as a coach in my program? And that's we hope our resource will help them be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. As a former coach and former school administrator, principal, I think that everything that you're sharing is not just applicable for athletic teams, but the culture piece extends in any organization. Your teammates, your colleagues, your employees, it's all so important. And you mentioned that the world has changed and it's really hard right now, and a leader has to face those hard things. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about Herman's whole brain thinking. You're trained in that. I hope that you will share a little bit for our listeners, and just share how that understanding of the way that we think can improve our character, our communication, and our effectiveness as leaders.
Well, I'm love that you brought that up. That's one of my favorite programs to administer, and I I actually went through it when I was in the corporate world. We had to take every type of assessment test known to man, and my degree was in behavioral management, so I tried to game them all. Didn't think they worked, uh, and I had a friend of mine talk to me about whole brain thinking when I was president of a small company, and I said, well, let me try it first, and uh, I tried it, and I said, woo, this just nailed me. And I said, so we put our whole company through it, and everything we do with high school kids, we do for businesses as well. But we put our whole company through it, and basically there are 4 different thinking styles that people have, and all of them are equally important, and they're all equally valuable. But if you have a large enough sample size, they're going to be 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. It's usually equally distributed. And when I do these exercises with businesses or students and we break them into their thinking style, it's almost a quarter, 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 quarter. So as a leader, there's a chance that 3 out of the 4 people you're working with don't think like you. And that's a little scary. First of all, you got to understand how you think. And when we say think, we're talking about what is your preferred or your dominant or your default thinking style. And there's 4 different thinking styles. There's those people that are very analytic and logical and rational. There's those people that are very operationally driven. Let's get her done. There's those people that are all relationship driven. And then there's that big picture, intuitive type folks. And as I said, all of those are important and you need them on a leadership team. You need to have all styles represented. But it's important as a leader that when you're communicating your message and you're trying to get your team to buy in to something, you've got to make sure your messaging is such that all 4 thinking styles hear what they want to hear. And if not, you're going to disconnect. And I always tell the high school leaders in our classes, I said, you got one group of your players, they just want to know, is what you're asking them to do, is it rational, is it logical? If it is, they're going to buy in. The other wants to know, just tell us what the steps are. How are we going to do it? Another group wants to know, how's this going to affect our people, our culture? And another group just wants to know, how's it going to make us better? And if you can include all 4 of those in your messaging, then you've hit everybody's, hot button. And so great leaders will think through, first of all, making sure they understand what their thinking style is and not get too dominant in their conversations because of the way they like it, and make sure they include, all of them.
That's so good. And I'll be sure to link Herman's whole brain thinking in our show notes for our listeners. And, that lens just feels especially relevant right now when so many people are navigating just so many different perspectives and pressures.
Absolutely. I highly, highly recommend it. It's my favorite instrument to use with a business or athletes or schools because it's just so right. And the kids really grasp it. We do an exercise and tell you how powerful it is. We can't have them go through the full document and the instrument online because they couldn't afford to do that for the high school kids. But I have the authority to give them a little mini way of evaluating their thinking style. And we break them up into 4 groups. And I asked them to plan the perfect spring break. And every one of those thinking styles comes out incredibly in that exercise. So the big picture people, they hardly have anything on their sheet. They just want to go out and experience stuff. Logical, rational people, they've got, does this really make sense? We got a week. How long? What's logical? What we can do? The operational mindset, they literally every time, Monday, blah, 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 Tuesday, Wednesday, they got it down by day. And the relational people, they're all group activities and they won't even put anything on the list unless everybody agrees to it. And it just plays out so beautifully with just a simple exercise will demonstrate how different people think.
That's fantastic. I love that. Worth trying, I think, with your own groups. That's really neat. I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about your organization. In 2008, you made a significant leap. You left the corporate world to fully pursue your calling. So what did that season of change teach you about courage and conviction and following your purpose?
Well, I need to explain why I left. I didn't plan to do it that way. I was president of a staffing company and had a minority interest in it, and we had planned to sell that business and ride off in the sunset with a really nice check. And I was going to fund my foundation and try to scale it. And I won't bore you with the details, but we weren't able to sell the business because of the things that were happening at that time in the industry we were in. So at a ripe age, I told my partner, I said, if I'm not going to make any money, I might as well not make it doing what I want to do. And so I went home and told my wife, I said, look, we got a decision to make here. I think we're going to have to step out on faith on this because literally every bit of our retirement money was in that business. I mean, literally everything. She said, well, maybe I ought to go back to work. I said, that'd be a great idea to do that tomorrow. But we literally, faith is a big part of my life. And we literally stepped out on faith with nothing in reality. And, I realized that, God's always been faithful. God is faithful and God will be faithful. And I was just very fortunate that I've had a lot of relationships over my life and spent a lot of time with folks, and they introduced me to a lot of other folks. I met some people I would have never, ever met had I not had to go out and raise money instead of funding it myself, and become great friends, great mentors. A lot of my mentors now are high school kids because that's who I work with, and I'm a little bit older than them now. So yeah, I had older mentors at one point in time, and now I have a lot of younger mentors to tell me about what's going on. But I've just been blessed with a lot of folks and that have, been encouragers for us. And we just keep, I think of the analogy, and we use it with kids, that, life and leadership, and a lot of it's like running the hurdles. And when you run the hurdles, they tell you not to look at the hurdles, but to look at the finish line, because, the hurdles are nothing but an obstacle that can keep you from getting to the finish line. So, and they even teach your body lane and your vision to be focused above the hurdles so you don't see them. And so that's kind of what I've done. I've just tried to say, I believe I'm led to do this. I believe I'm qualified to do this. And I keep looking at the finish line and step over one hurdle at a time.
What a cool, story of how God provides, and, that he often takes the best laid plans we have and makes them even better, and builds in those relationships and things that we never thought about. So, thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm. And as we begin to wrap up, Jack, if every listener remembered just one message from your decades of leadership work, what would you want it to be about character and its role in building a meaningful life?
I can sum that up. Start right now putting together your personal I believe list, and then read it every day until it becomes second nature. If you do that, everything else going to fall into place. That's my one takeaway.
That's great.
And Jack, for leaders and educators who are listening and they think, I want to do this, I want to bring this kind of character work to my school or my team, where's the best place for them to start connecting with you and with the Ideals Foundation?
Well, thank you for that, Laura. It's just idealsleadership.org is the website. My email is jackw@idealsleadership.org. If they want another podcast after they listen to yours, they can go to jackwwilliams.com and listen to my Knowledge Cast, where I just try to interview interesting people. But if you want to learn about our programs, it would just go to idealsleadership.org.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack. And for all of our listeners, we'll make sure to put these links in our show notes so that you can easily connect and continue learning. And we encourage you to check out his work. Whether you're leading students or athletes or adults, there is something there that can help you clarify your values and lead with greater purpose. Jack, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your story with us today. Your work is a powerful reminder that leadership's built from the inside out. And this conversation reinforces why character isn't an extra in leadership, it's the absolute foundation. We are grateful for the impact you continue to have on students and leaders in communities across the country.
Well, thank you for having me. And again, thank you for what you're doing and the points that you're trying to emphasize through your podcast.
And if you're listening along today, head over to Instagram and let us know what resonated most from this conversation. We'd love to keep the dialogue going there as well. You can find us on Instagram at coc.podcast.
And until next time, keep building character in your community, one decision, one relationship, and one conversation at a time.